Testing. There we go. All right. I call the special meeting of the Ames City Council for April 16th to order. Thank you for everyone who is here tonight. And we have two items of business council that we need to attend to before we get into the item 3, the purpose for the workshop. So item 1, and the 1114 South Dakota Avenue, which is tabled from last meeting because they were absent a signed and executed agreement with the developer. So entertain a motion on resolution approving zoning change agreement for 1114 South Dakota.
So moved. Second.
All right, discussion, roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then the next item on this topic is third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4383, rezoning 1114 South Dakota Avenue from community commercial residential to community commercial residential with revised master plan. Is there a motion?
Move on third.
Second.
All right, discussion. Roll call.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, the next item is power plant unit 8 boiler maintenance service. And this is an emergency contract change order, and Curtis Spence from the power plant is here. Does anyone have any questions for him? Otherwise, we'll move through this one as well too. Okay, entertain a motion on resolution approving emergency contract change order number 2 with the Jamar Company of Duluth, Minnesota, in the not to exceed amount of $15,000.
So moved. Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Roll call.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And then resolution approving contract change order number 3 with the Jamar Company of Duluth, Minnesota, and not to exceed amount of $75,000.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Discussion. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much. On to item 3, purpose for our workshop tonight is massage establishment human trafficking workshop. And just for those in the audience, here's just kind of reviewing what our order will be tonight. First of all, staff will give us a quick presentation, and the council will have some conversation with staff regarding that. And that may take 5 or 10 minutes. After that, Dr. Blitzos and Michelle. Sorry, Michelle, I forgot your last name. But anyway, they've asked to speak, and they were also behind the purpose of the workshop. So we will allow up to 15 minutes. I asked them to make it 10, but they go up to 15. After that, we will take public input, and we will ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. And as we have done in previous workshops or sessions, if you agree with somebody and don't have any new information to share, you're welcome to come up and say, I agree with you, but we just ask that you not repeat the same thing over and over and over again, just so we are efficient with the time. And my goal tonight is to be done and out of here within an hour. I think we can get that done. And also as an outcome tonight, I don't want people to be disappointed. There will not be an ordinance passed this evening. There's a process we go through. It's a legal process. City attorney goes through specific steps. What we're looking for tonight from council is there an interest to move forward on that? And then we'll give direction to staff to begin that process. But it's very methodical. We're required to follow that process. So I just don't want people to think that we're going to instantly have something in place tonight, because that's just not feasible. So anyway, but we are interested in having a conversation. So with that said, Chief and Brian, if you would go ahead and proceed with your presentation. And
I'll begin with some comments from a law enforcement perspective on this issue, and then I think Brian will try to set the stage on some of the options and the choices involved in local regulation. As you know, trafficking and exploitation are very real issues across the country, and unfortunately also in Iowa. We're here tonight to discuss regulation of massage services, but I think it's important to note that trafficking also occurs in a number of other settings. We know it occurs in construction, retail, agriculture. It's all around us, unfortunately. Trafficking cases for law enforcement are long, complex, and difficult cases. Victims are moved around the state, they're moved around the country. Part of that is to interfere with development of trusting relationships that we need to prosecute the traffickers. And so these are still a challenge for law enforcement to work with. With respect to massage establishments, the premise behind most local regulations is to require evidence of state licensure and allow city officials on the premises to verify that that local requirement of holding state licensure is being adhered to. Simply requiring display of the license gives the local community a starting point in evaluating the capability of the provider, and in fact, for the law enforcement investigating a local misdemeanor of failure to display a license, which is the way many of these are shaping up. It's a pretty straightforward response, but most importantly, it puts a city official on the premises, in the building, and that is usually what we need to begin an investigation or explore further whether trafficking is occurring on a premise. I think equally or perhaps more important, sometimes a requirement of that nature, when it's clear, when it's known, when it's communicated effectively, is a deterrent to illegal forms of trafficking in these services. So that's what's behind the community interest. That's what's behind the other municipalities in the state that are looking for ways to discourage this kind of activity. And it's what brings us here tonight. There are two actions pending in the legislature that could affect our local practices. And there's Senate File 267, makes practice of massage therapy or improper use of credentials a serious misdemeanor. Right now, a violation of those licensing practices is not a prima facie law enforcement issue. We don't get involved in licensing. The footnote to that, I would tell you that a number of the license actions taken by the state have been a byproduct of a criminal investigation that we've pursued in this community. If you look on the state website, you can see some of those cases where credentials have been affected as a byproduct of our criminal investigation. By establishing a criminal violation of these licensing regulations, it puts us one step closer to that investigative process. So if the state pursues that direction over the long term, it's also an aid to our ability to get involved in these situations and determine whether trafficking is in fact occurring. I should note an amendment to this bill would shield violators from criminal consequences if they were the victim of someone who was engaged in trafficking, and that's a common principle applied in the trafficking ordinances, and it's an important part of what we communicate to the victims as we work through these investigations. Brian?
So I want to talk a little bit about the staff memo and the next steps for you here tonight. So as the mayor indicated, this workshop was called by you, city council members, at the request of George Bolitzos and Michelle DeMarie. And they'll provide you some more information later about what specifically they're requesting. But not yet knowing what your appetite is for this particular topic and not yet knowing what the content exactly of their proposal is and what others will have to say, our staff report is more preliminary, just to engage in this conversation. I do want to point out, though, that it seems to us as we look at the different alternatives you might take, there's a pretty wide spectrum of different levels of local government involvement in this particular profession. And so on one end of the spectrum of less involvement, we have the situation as it is now, where it is a state-regulated occupation and there is an administrative process for licensure. The next step involving more local involvement would be potentially the outcome of the bills in front of the state legislature right now, which would make practicing without a license a criminal, a serious misdemeanor penalty. And that would have a law enforcement involvement aspect of massage therapy. And then there are more directly local regulating models of working with massage therapy. And the more minimal step is something along the lines of the Des Moines Ordinance, which allows the city to require that licenses be produced upon demand and allows local officials to close an establishment until such time as those licenses are provided. The next step beyond that would be something like the Iowa City Ordinance, which provides pretty much the same types of mechanisms, but also requires the operator of the business to produce certain information about the employees who provide massage and maintain that information and produce it on demand. That is philosophically a little bit different than requiring the license. It's a little bit more information. It's a little more intrusive into the operations of the business. And so that's something that you would need to think about, whether philosophically you're supportive of that approach. And then as we go further into this side of the spectrum, which is more local government involvement, you have models like the Johnston or Cedar Rapids model, which involve layering a new local regulatory system on top of the existing state system. So it would require local licensure, local background checks of the providers, and so forth on a regular basis. So the question there would be, philosophically, are you supportive of a separate licensing process at the local level? We have some local licensure for certain occupations in a very limited sense. Most of those are activities and occupations that occur in public space rather than on private property. So we would need to think about how that would fit with our methods of enforcement and regulation and licensure and so forth. I should note that if the council is interested in moving towards a model that would be more intensive from a regulatory standpoint, I think it would be helpful if you were to ask us to go back and research that a little bit further and what that might mean for implementing such a model, because it would be such a departure from how we're operating now. We would need to understand how that works, what the costs are for from an administrative standpoint, as well as on the providers for compliance, and the effectiveness of that model and so forth. So there would be a lot more questions to answer if we were to take that approach headed towards the more intensive side of the spectrum. So I just wanted to provide you with that overview of the different models that might be out there, and ask you to consider, one, at the end of tonight, one, do you want local involvement? And two, to what extent do you want that to occur? So those are really the questions we would need to understand if you wanted us to proceed.
Okay, questions for either Chief Sykosh or Brian?
John, can I start with a question for Mark?
Or Mark? Sure.
Yeah. So Mark, I'd like to think about this from a 10,000-foot perspective rather than the massage therapy for a moment. So in general, when we go about thinking about regulating a particular area, one of the things that we think about is whether the state has already carved out that particular area and created a law regulating that particular activity. It's my understanding that where the legislature has claimed that territory of regulation, then cities are not permitted to go into that. Is that a correct statement generally?
It's close. The general rule of law is that cities and local governments in general may regulate in in the same areas as the state unless the state has, unless the local regulations are in conflict with the state law, or unless the state law has either on an express basis or an implied basis sort of captured the field. You know, they've pretty much regulated in every aspect and made it clear that they didn't intend for local governments to regulate. I don't think that's the case in this situation. And you know, you asked me this question this afternoon by email, and I took a look at it and I read through the regulations for massage therapists, took a look at some of the case law on you know, home rule authority and you know, conflicts between state and local laws. But I don't think that there's anything in the state law. There's certainly nothing expressed that says that, you know, local governments may not regulate in this area. There's and I don't believe there's enough there that would lead a court to believe that they've, you know, they've captured the whole field, and they were implying that local governments shouldn't regulate in this area. So I based upon the proposals I've seen, most of the things in there I think would pass muster if they were challenged legally. There may be certain aspects, you know, that we would want to stop and think about, but as I look at the Des Moines ordinance, for example, I think we have the authority to do what the city of Des Moines has done.
And the Des Moines ordinance is really not doing anything more than just asking for the licensure to be displayed.
Right.
I'm more interested in things like the Cedar Rapids and Johnston model, where the community has added on top of the state license a municipal license.
Yes.
And I worry a little bit, and I'll defer to you since you're the city attorney. That seems like almost on its face an effort to for the municipality to move into the area that the state has already carved out.
I would be a little hesitant to move in the direction of having us having the city come up with our own licenses because the state has a licensing system. Whether the court would view that as a conflict or not, it's, you know, I can't say with certainty, but I think it's more likely on that than anything else that I've looked at. So, you know, once they've established, you know, like you could get into situations where, well, we're not going to let someone practice here because they don't have a city license, but they've got a state license. Well, they've got a state license that really shouldn't allow them to practice anywhere in the state. So I could see where that could be viewed as a conflict. So I would be hesitant to go in that direction on that issue, for example.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah.
Brian, just to clarify, you said that we do have separate licensing processes at the local level in some instances. Mm-hmm. Is this the liquor licensing and peddler licenses that you're referring to, or?
Yeah, so we do have local regulation over certain activities, things such as alcohol and tobacco sales, fireworks shooting, not selling, garbage hauling, door-to-door sales, those kinds of things. This is those types of things tend to happen out in public spaces or not in a fixed location. So they're a little bit different animal, I think, than regulating the occupation of massage therapy, perhaps.
Thank you.
I have a question for Mark, following up on Tim's question. Yeah. Aside from what we know about the recent legislative activity involving human trafficking, as far as I know, the last legislative activity we saw with respect to massage therapy was deleting the entire enforcement chapter of the state code for massage therapy, right? Yeah. For violations.
Right.
So how do you think of that in terms of stepping towards preempting the field of massage therapy or actually saying to the localities, you should do this?
Yeah. Well, you know, one could make an argument that because they've pulled some of those things out that they're, you know, maybe that they have the intent to not enforce it as strongly. You could also argue that it's now silent on those issues and allows us to regulate. And I'm not exactly sure what the answer is on that. But,
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mark, Chief, or Brian? Obviously, we can continue the conversation afterwards as well, too. All right. Dr. George or Michelle, who's going to go first? Okay.
George volunteered.
And if you would please introduce yourself, first and last name and your address before you start. And
Sure.
go ahead.
My name is Michelle DeMarie. I live at 4933 Utah Drive. I am a licensed massage therapist. I have my own practice and I do work out of our private residence primarily. I'm also contracted with a couple of area organizations as an independent contractor. I'm here today on behalf of my profession, for lack of a better way of putting it. I am newer to this industry. I came from a very heavily regulated industry to massage therapy, and I've had some surprises along the way. And quite frankly, this has been one of them. It never occurred to me that there would be individuals that would establish illicit practices under the guise of practicing massage. It saddens me, it sickens me to know that there are people being victimized. So I'm here kind of twofold to represent my industry and say that on behalf of myself, and I have 10 wonderful therapists here with me, and I know there's several others in the room along with Dr. George, that basically are asking the council to please consider helping us. We do a very good job of self-policing. These illicit practices are not difficult to recognize. It really is about raising public awareness, but it's the next step. If you report it, what happens after that? The state of Iowa does do a wonderful job of licensing us. Yes, that is covered. So I really would feel that if the council were to pursue with an ordinance established at the local level, that may be a little redundant and very taxing on some resources, Chief, to require the city to also to do that. So I think the licensing part is already taken care of, and taken care of very well. The issue is that I've seen in several other surrounding communities is that while these illicit businesses are open, there really is a difficult way for the local authorities to get that foot in the door. You know, there were some suspicions reported a few years ago, and it took the state, according to one of my massage therapist friends, around 18 months before anything was investigated and done. So if there is, and this would be more of a reactive mode. So in our opinion, we're not sure. That would be up to how that would work. But our understanding would be that nothing would really be required unless somebody voiced a concern, and then that place of establishment would be visited by the local authorities and the licensor, you know, to make sure that the licenses are displayed. One thing that I feel would maybe need to be considered is just to ensure that the license that's being displayed is valid and in effect still. But that's not difficult to do. The state of Iowa maintains a registry, so it's very easy. You can look my name up immediately. You know, you can go to the state of Iowa website and look up and see who has an active license. To my knowledge, in the last that I looked, we have 49 actively licensed massage therapists here in town. I'm not sure if any of you were aware of that, but that's a lot of massage therapists. Now that's based on their Ames addresses, of course. But we all love our industry. We're very saddened, as I said before, that it's been tarnished by these individuals. So again, I'm primarily here to speak on behalf of my industry. And I think it's kind of unique that we're asking for something like this. We feel that we do need a little bit of additional oversight in this industry. The state just doesn't appear to have the capacity potentially, you know, to review all of the concerns and complaints that are registered. So again, trying to raise that awareness. Another thing important to mention is some of my clients, and I have heard that you can walk into an establishment and maybe the owner or manager will have their therapist say that they can only work under one license. And I hope that most of you know, and if you didn't before, you will now, we are all required to maintain an individual license. So if somebody from the community walks into a place of business and ask the therapist to see their license and they say, well, I don't have one, but my manager does, that's an immediate red flag. And again, I think there needs to be some public education, and Dr. George and his group, and I know there's some students here, thank you for coming too. There's a lot of people that are trying to raise the awareness. The other role that I'm serving tonight is a concerned citizen. We don't want these places of business in our communities. I know you don't either. So I feel that a local ordinance would be a complement to the laws that are already in effect and aid in not only that, but I'm thrilled to know that there are some things being passed to protect the victims. That has not been done in the past. So we want to help them as well. So twofold: protect the integrity of our profession that we're incredibly proud to serve and passionate about, and also in concerns for public safety. So thank you so much for your consideration and your time tonight.
Michelle,
Sure.
because you and Dr. George are presenters, I'll allow council to ask any questions of you. That will not be the case in public input. Public input, you'll be allowed to offer your input to council, but it will not be a back and forth conversation. But any questions for Michelle before she sits down? I had two questions. One is there any problem with forgery of licenses?
My understanding is that is a potential. There are these individuals, it's $1 billion industry. They're going to be very creative. And correct me if I'm wrong when you're up speaking, Dr. George, but I've learned a lot. I'll be honest, I was a little bit leery of local ordinances about a year ago, but the more I've learned and the more research I've done and the time that I've seen it's taken to address some of the illicit businesses, and with the Des Moines ordinance being passed, something similar, those are simple but very effective and meaningful. But yes, I think there's always a potential for that. Money drives those things.
But there is a state registry that the law enforcement could quickly
yes,
check on.
absolutely.
And I think I heard you say that the individual LMTs are actually licensed individually. It's not like a business license that overarches. So are we here, is council hearing that even just having the individual LMT licenses on display when they would come into the front, reception area would be adequate in your opinion versus trying to get into the deeper?
Sure. So I think that's a good step in the right direction. If there's any suspicions, then maybe they could dig a little further. But I know that we have Amy here who owns Massage Heights in town, and they display all of the licensed massage therapists. We get renewal cards. So we have two things. We have a main certificate, and then we are also given wallet cards, basically. So my certificate is displayed very prominently in my therapy room, even at my residence. And then when I get my card at renewal, it has the effective date and the expiration date. So that's in the corner of my certificate. Then my extra wallet card is carried with me at all times, so I can produce that. I do work for hospice with the elderly, so at any time, I can produce that if anyone asks for it. We are also allowed to request duplicate certificates and cards if we need them, if we have, more than one location that we work out of. So that solves that issue as well. Does that help, Mayor?
Yes, thank you.
Michelle, thank you for your presentation. So of the options that we have in our packet, is there one in particular that you think represents what you'd like to see us do?
I have done a lot of work with Dr. George and several of the local LMTs, and we were very thrilled when the Des Moines ordinance passed. It's very simple, not just for us, but it doesn't drain the resources that are already probably stretched a little bit locally. So yes, the Des Moines ordinance is very attractive to us. Councilman Martin also offered another by email and asked if there was, it was the Iowa City ordinance, I believe, Councilman, that requiring upon request that we complete a business information form for, you know, for sole proprietors, obviously just for myself, but Amy would be able to produce one for each of her therapists. And it just kind of speaks to, you know, the therapist's name, license number. So that might be an additional step the council could potentially, and again, that wouldn't be invasive on Chief Sykoff's team or the city administrators. It would be pretty easy. I would feel it would be something that we could just maybe potentially download from the city website or obtain one and have filled out and on hand if we're asked for it. I don't feel that would be invasive at all. And again, we're not the massage therapists that they're going after, so to speak. So we're here to say that we do feel that there needs to be another layer of oversight, but we don't want to make it so restrictive and burdensome that we, you know, that we basically, you know, how do I want to say it? Just don't want people to go into this wonderful business. So we don't, you know, we don't want to discourage anyone either.
If I could follow up on that, please.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you.
Right. We had an email exchange about that idea, which is one of the aspects of the Iowa City ordinance. And I was just asking how it struck you then.
Sure.
And then I also mentioned, and this goes back to something that you discussed earlier, having to do with whether the manager is licensed and whether the license applies to the LMTs on site or not. So one requirement of licensure, as I understand it, is that you must display your license somehow, but the state requirement doesn't have any enforcement behind that I know of.
Correct.
So my question to you was, if the manager were required under a city ordinance to display the licenses of everyone who's working on site, is that something that you feel would be acceptable to your industry, or would that be burdensome, or how do you feel?
I think that would be very acceptable. And I think that would be the only edit that I might recommend to a Des Moines type ordinance. It really only goes after, so to speak, the person that's operating without a license. It really doesn't do anything to address the owner or the manager above them. So I think that's an important thing to consider as well. You know, these people that are forced into this, why would we victimize the people that are already being victimized? So if we truly want to pass a meaningful ordinance that helps combat human and sex trafficking, that would definitely be something that we would want to see considered. Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle, you mentioned that there are currently at least 49 people who have addresses in Ames who are massage therapists. I would assume that at least a portion of those people are like you, working out of your home with a home occupation permit, which is another level of city administration that the council might not be aware of because it doesn't show up in our staff report.
Sure.
Could you explain to council what that involves?
Sure. So that may be something that you would want to consider as well, that I'm not a fan of exemptions because I feel there have been some ordinances passed in surrounding communities with exemptions, and some of them I felt were kind of a roadmap for the criminal, basically telling them how they can get around the rules. But one exemption that you may consider, because as Gloria states, I did apply and was approved for a special occupancy permit. And so there was a lot of information that I had to fill out. And I'm not sure, I can't remember if any of the council members here present were on that committee. But I mean, I had to give the size of my driveway, the hours I would be operating. My neighbors were notified within a certain radius. They were invited to attend the meeting. I did have one gentleman show up as soon as he saw me. He said, "Oh, I'm not worried at all." But but yeah, so there's quite a process to go through. And I do believe, I can't recall what the fee was, but I did pay a fee and had to address the council, and they asked some great questions. So that level I feel has been, that's a very good point, Gloria. Thank you for allowing me to speak to that. So there is that layer of oversight as well. And that's the first thing I did, of course, was apply for that permit before I established my practice at home.
So in terms of exemptions, you're thinking maybe that would be enough to...
I mean, that would be up to the council. You may want to review the application for the special occupancy, for the special zoning, just to make sure that that would satisfy the count, I mean, I feel that would be up to you, but I felt like I offered lots of information that, and again, if a citizen states a concern or a complaint against one of us, we need to be able to produce our license regardless of where we work, I feel, so.
Okay. Thank
All
you very
right.
much.
Thank you so much for your time and the opportunity to speak to this tonight.
George Belitzos, 5508 West Lincoln Way, Ames. Good evening, Council. I want to begin by first thanking the mayor and the council for scheduling this human trafficking workshop. Tonight, I speak on behalf of the Iowa Network Against Human Trafficking and Slavery. It's an all-volunteer group that is the only statewide group that is addressing human trafficking and trying to bring all the parties together, the regional groups, the city groups, to work on a common goal, which is to rid Iowa of human trafficking. Tonight I plead with the council to lend us a hand in fighting this heinous crime in which traffickers net a huge profit off the bodies of their victims. Specifically, we're asking the council to eventually instruct our city attorney to draft an ordinance to regulate and set standards to create a clear separation between therapeutic massage, the legitimate businesses that do great work, and shady businesses that use massage as a ruse for prostitution and trafficking. What we're asking you to do is make Ames the least hospitable place for traffickers to do business. For nearly 2 years, the network has been urging local cities to pass ordinances to crack down on illicit massage parlors. Since then, we've been successful in getting 16 cities to adopt ordinances. If you want later, I'll read through the list of cities. Some of them were mentioned in the material that the staff sent you, but there are now 16 cities. I've been increasingly concerned about Ames since so many cities, especially in the last 6 months, have passed ordinances. Because these illicit massage businesses have moved out of town where they're under inspection and where there's more risk involved, and they moved to friendlier places like Ames, where there's less risk of being discovered. These fronts for sex trafficking advertise online in hidden websites in the belly of the internet. This is how they inform the buyers of sex that they're open for business. The internet is driving the sex trafficking industry, and they are, as soon as one site is shut down by Congress, another site opens. The internet listing ads have phrases such as new pretty girls coming soon, new girl, new feeling. Those are both quotes from ads from last year that were on Backpage from massage businesses in Ames. Photos accompany these internet ads, and they show women dressed in high heels, lingerie, and thongs. Back in May 2017, the network worked very hard with the legislature on a bill, was Senate File 445, which repealed the Iowa Code Section 152C. This repeal gave Iowa cities the authority to require licenses and enforce restrictions and/or regulations on massage businesses. For example, cities, and some of them have done this through their ordinances, now require criminal background checks. There is no requirement of a criminal background check for a licensed massage therapist. Some of the ordinances do that, others do not. A lot of them require a form to be filled out by the owners, identifying the owner's address. Some of them require in their ordinances that the business can only be owned by a state, someone who lives within the state of Iowa. Some ordinances have gone so far as to limit the hours. A lot of these businesses are open all night or until in the wee hours of the morning, and those have been passed. And so there's all different levels. There's actually 16 different ordinances. None of them are exactly alike. I noticed in the city staff report that there was a mention that what we might do is just wait for the state to increase regulation. The state has actually, what led to the home rule being given back, the city, I was with the mayor and several council members when we visited the legislature. So many home rules have been taken away from the city. This is an example of home rule given to you. The state does not want to do anything more than license. And 2 years ago, the springboard to this repeal was because the state legislature is trying to deregulate and get out of involvement of licensing. And they actually had a bill, had a hearing to do away with the state licensing of massage therapy, as well as several other state licenses. I was at the hearing, the first hearing of the full committee. It passed the subcommittee, and they had over 3,000 emails objecting to that move. They still had a bill this year to try it again. It didn't get through committee. So the state is not interested. Am I up? Time up?
You have 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. A lot has changed since the last time we were here, August 2017. At that time, that was the last time you considered an ordinance. A lot has changed since then. First, the city of Johnston at that time was the only city with an ordinance, and we were looking at that. That's a very different ordinance than the Des Moines ordinance. So we've come a long way. Second, there is a growing public awareness of this problem. Since January 1st in central Iowa, 9 traffickers have been sentenced to prison, all operating in central Iowa. Third, massage therapists are now starting to support local ordinances. We didn't have that 2 years ago, and we thank them for that. Finally, the city council, this city council, the people who came before you have taken a stand for public health and safety many times. You were the first city to pass an ordinance to ban smoking in restaurants. That eventually led to the whole state doing the same. You passed a beer keg registration ordinance. That led to the whole state having a law. You banned e-cigarettes use in public places. That led to the whole state doing the same. We want you to take the lead on this again. Thank you.
George, if
any questions?
yeah, let me ask the same question I asked Michelle. What would you like the city council to consider? What would be an ideal outcome for you?
In talking with the massage therapists and to get their support, we're willing to compromise. They favor the least restrictive ordinance, which is City of Des Moines, but we both agreed that it needs some tweaking. I was on the email with the suggested changes, for example, having a business form filled out. I really support that, and also placing more interest and concern with the owners and operators of these businesses. So we would be willing to support the Des Moines ordinance with some changes similar to what David Martin has proposed.
Council, because the only ordinance that was in the packet was the Des Moines ordinance, it's my preference that we not really talk about, I mean, we can refer to just, other ordinances, have staff come back with those if we want to have them as exhibits and talk about them, in more detail, because the general public hasn't had a chance to look at those as well too. So anyway, I mean, the point is there are some options that Brian outlined. I think that we can certainly dig deeper, but I think the point is the next step would be is looking at other ordinances we could, examine. But the point is, I think he asked your question, though. Is that correct, Tim?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for Dr. George?
George, how do you feel about this last thing that I was asking Michelle about, the fact that home massage therapists already go through a rigorous business approval process? Are you interested in any exemptions for those situations?
I think I would like to see all massage therapists subject to the same requirements, and I'd prefer not to have exemptions.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have a number of individuals who'd like to address council, so you'll have 3 minutes, and we'll start with, is it Sia? I'm sorry, I couldn't tell if Gia, so anyway, so it's Sia, is that correct?
Yep,
Sia
Sia.
Turner, okay, Sia.
Alrighty, hello guys. And I live at 1930 Long Road, apartment 166B. My name is Sia Turner, and I'm here on behalf of the Iowa State Network Against Human Trafficking. We are the student chapter of a wider statewide organization. So as a student organization, we work on campus to educate students and also the community about human trafficking and the fact that it is happening here in Ames, Iowa. This month is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and to that end, I want to sort of tell you about two different instances regarding massage parlors here in Ames. So both of these cases happened in 2016, and we have been pushing for legislation and an ordinance that regulates massage parlors since then. So these two, one happened in North Grand Mall in 2016. A man was arrested. He did not have a license. He was not practicing under a license, and he was found to have assaulted two women who had actually come in to the parlor. So that was one instance. Another instance that I actually just recently learned about happened on Duff Avenue, I believe. It happened on Duff Avenue, and a man and another woman who was also working at the parlor were both arrested. The man, who was also the business owner, did not have a license and was not operating under a license. The woman, I believe, did, but she was also selling sex out of the parlor, and this was right on Duff Avenue. This is where shopping happens, families go to play, there's a park right around there. So from a student perspective, we are here to advocate for a massage parlor ordinance. We see it as a definite need in the city of Ames. As Georgia said, 16 cities have already passed an ordinance. There's no reason a city like ours, with the amount of students and families and people going in and out of every day, doesn't have something to regulate massage parlors. With the support of licensed massage therapists, I believe that there's no reason to not have an interest in going forward in this. The regulations that we're asking for simply ask for you to be able to produce those documents. And if someone is to go into those places and ask for a license, you need to be able to produce those. And every licensed massage therapist and legitimate business is able to do that. So an ordinance like this would just crack down on the illegitimate businesses that are selling sex.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sia. Diana Crosswaite.
Hi, I'm Diana Crosswaite. I live at 2005 Prairie View East here in Ames, and I'm just a citizen, not representing anybody. I was living under a rock until last week. I saw the movie Grid Shock. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it is very enlightening, and it tells you that human trafficking is happening here in Iowa. I thought it was a problem of the big city. So I came to say I would encourage you to be intrusive. I think it's very important that there is at least a business information form on file. I think law enforcement should be able to walk in. They go into all sorts of places. I think we have a great relationship with our Ames Police and our Iowa State Public Safety, so they should be visible. And I think just because a license is displayed, that doesn't necessarily mean the license and the person go together. We need to make sure that these women are protected. They have been victimized already by the traffickers. We don't need to victimize them by our system. So I thank you for your time. I hope we can come up with something. And then later, when some of these women are recovered from the system, they shouldn't be penalized. They did not choose to go into prostitution. They were forced into it. So we need to make sure that we have resources available to them so they can hopefully get their lives back on track, because it's nothing that you would want your daughter to go through, your sister, your neighbor. And until we all stand up and take a stand and say enough, it's going to keep happening. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Diana. Cindy Larson.
Hi, my name's Cindy Larson. I live at 507 26th Street in Ames here. I am a licensed massage therapist in my own home. So I do have what Michelle has, an ordinance. I would like to, hopefully you consider the Des Moines ordinance. I really think that would be good. Also, I don't know if you know this, but you can be licensed as nationally too as a massage therapist. I do have that. It's just an option. Massage therapists don't have to do it if they don't want to, but I am licensed, so I have, that's when they do a background check. So I do have that. And I also have a home occupancy permit. So that's all I have. And thank you for all your time for this. And I appreciate everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca Christensen.
I live at 304 East 16th Street. I am a licensed massage therapist. I have had a home occupation permit here in Ames since 1995. Been doing massage out of my home for 24 years here. And I was in on when we had licensure, and I thought, well, this is great. That will help with the massage parlors, and it did for a long time. I'm amazed that it's popping up again. It's like, gee, you know, what happened to the world here? Anyway, some of us originally thought, okay, another restriction on us, and we're innocent of this. But we came around, the Des Moines ordinance does seem like it's an effective ordinance for the police, and then not so bad for us to do more train or background checks and fingerprinting and licenses and fees and this type of thing. So I just ask you to do whatever you can to get what you need to come down on massage parlors, but consider us. If I've been doing massage for 28 years, I'm certainly not into human trafficking. So thank you.
Thank you. Georgia Bloom.
Georgia Bloom. I live at 1801 20th Street. That's the North Crest community. I am in agreement with everything that these people have said just before me. I'm just a 50-year citizen of Ames, Iowa. I want it to be the best place to live. I don't want this trafficking to go on if there's any way that we can stop it. And this looks like one way that we can do, to stop it. I've worked with the Network for Human Trafficking for, I don't know, probably 5 or 10 years. I also represent the Rotary Club of Ames, and we have been into this situation of working with human trafficking also. So I just hope that you can come up with a very affirmative way to take care of this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Bloom?
Dale Bloom. And I live at North Crest. And
let me guess, same address as a previous person.
I got to think about it a while. Is it 1801? 1801 20th Street, and it's our unit is A.
That's good.
A34. Okay. Now where was I? Okay. I've been involved with the Rotary Club too, and with others looking at this problem. And the more I hear about it, it becomes a bigger problem than I even thought it ever would be. And so I just hope that you're listening to some of these suggestions and that you'll find a way that we could put some kind of a policy that would stop it from happening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And last card I have is from Brittany. Don't have a last name. Brittany.
Hi, my name is Brittany Lenahan, and I'm at 1525 Airport Road. Most people, when they think of a massage therapist, think of someone who had to enroll and go through a massage therapy education program, which led to many hours of training before being able to venture out and gain the credentials licensed massage therapist. For most, hanging that framed piece of paper for all to see represents all the hard work it took to get to that point. For most people who seek a massage, it is because of a medical issue or just needing to distress and simply relax by receiving a massage. Most only know of the Swedish massage, deep tissue, those types. There's many more out there. What most people do not know or think of when it comes to massage is the fact there are some massage businesses working in a way where they have the community believe they are a licensed massage parlor, providing true massage services when in reality they are not. Instead, it is something much more sinister. There are women and men who are being used for the hands of other people within the community who have other intentions than receiving the type of massage most know of. Human trafficking is happening everywhere. Most importantly, is happening in our community here in Ames, Iowa. And massage parlors are one of many places in where this is happening. What these individuals have to endure is unimaginable. I am a sexual abuse advocate with a focus on human trafficking at an agency called Access. I provide support for victims and survivors who have been sexually abused and help create hope for labor and sex trafficking survivors. In order to do so, our agency provides one-on-one counseling, options and resources, and a safe place to stay while people decide what path is right for them. I bring this up because I have gotten to meet and build rapport with many sex trafficking survivors. And throughout those meetings, I have grown abundantly through gaining knowledge through that person's experience. Each person is different, but time and time again, I have heard the endless battles one has to go through every day and have been asked further in someone's healing what it is that communities are doing to help combat this heinous crime. We provide services to Tama, Marshall, Story, Boone, and Greene counties. Each has done their own part to help combat human trafficking in their community and have either already passed the massage ordinance or are in the process of starting the conversation to bring it to their community. I hope to be able to tell them all of the different ways communities are coming together to help combat human trafficking and adding the massage ordinance on that list for Story County because everyone deserves freedom and a safe community to live in. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to address council?
I apologize if that was from reason.
Just get some Aaron, please. Thank you.
My name is Rachel Brown, and I live at 3241 East Main Street Road, Marshalltown. I'm here today representing myself as an LMT and also representing American Massage Therapy Association, Iowa chapter. I'm just going to feed off a couple of things that Michelle touched on and keep it short for you. One distinction I wanted to make about the discussion about state, what the state can do and what the city can do with an ordinance, with a local, the reason that local ordinances seem to be necessary is that even though there are things written in the state code, the local ordinance, what that allows the law enforcement to do is to immediately placard a business so that they can do the investigation necessary. That seems to be the missing link with what the state has in place. Just wanted to clarify that in case that wasn't stated like that. In speaking to a more restrictive ordinance, there are actually Iowa City, Urbandale, Marion, and Des Moines that have the less restrictive ordinances. So if you haven't seen Marion or Urbandale or Iowa City on top of Des Moines. Speaking to the restrictions, we are not in favor of those restrictions, as they said, but one of the reasons that Urbandale would tell you is that, or I'm sorry, not Urbandale, Clive, is that they were so busy trying to get their therapist licensed that they couldn't get the businesses shut down immediately. So it does create so much legwork that they weren't able to tend to what was necessary and get those businesses placarded and shut down.
Can I interrupt, please? Can you just say which restrictions you're referring to? I'm not following.
Oh, the restrictive ordinances in like restricting by making, fill out application for a city license with hours and hour restrictions and pay and that kind of stuff.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. The one that they were saying that would create more work for the law enforcement. And then just a distinction, the word parlor keeps coming up. And you'll hear all of us sitting in the audience chuckling as a licensed massage therapist because that kind of stirs up some big stuff for us, okay? So I just want to clarify for anyone who does not understand what that word means. The word parlor refers to what we like to call now the illegitimate massage therapy business, okay? So we don't want an ordinance that says a massage parlor ordinance. We are licensed massage therapists practicing massage therapy in massage therapy businesses. Anything that's referred to as a parlor is the illicit business. So we kind of like to refer to those as illicit massage therapy businesses and kind of eliminate the word parlor because it stirs up all of the stereotype and stigma of what used to be. So if it's possible to refrain from using that word again, we will be much obliged. Last but not least, really quickly, I just want to say that I am working with our lobbyist at a state level, and some of the things that we've talked about, people have said that state doesn't have or doesn't want to do anything. I'm trying to encourage state to put pictures on licenses, do background checks at a state level, and charge for that if necessary. So things like that. They'll come back and say that it's a budget issue, it's a resource issue. I'm trying to work with Tony Alden and the Iowa Board of Massage Therapy on those things. And there has been some talk in the governor office that adding like a picture might be something that'd be feasible. So just an added thing. And we were able to my lobbyist was able to introduce the bill that was referenced earlier, SF 267 and HF 479. It did pass the House last night and it had passed the Senate, but there's an amendment. So it's proceeding, hopefully, to the governor's office, but we've already talked about that. But just another word on the state level is that I'm trying to encourage, we weren't able to get accomplished this year, but I'm trying to encourage a statewide type city ordinance. With so many different cities getting ordinances, there are so many places that a therapist might have to get an ordinance in order to work. So you might have to have one in all these different cities. So we are really hopeful that next legislative session, we can get some sort of a unification with ordinances allowing the law enforcement locally to do their business, but also to not make it so difficult for therapists to have to deal with, 99 different local ordinances. I think that's all I needed to say. Thank you.
Good timing.
My name is Amy Dollison, and I am the owner of Massage Heights Ames. And so I represent the business. And I live at 1018 Northeast Fountain View Drive in Ankeny, 50021. And I want to reiterate that I agree with everything that I have heard so far. And on behalf of a business, I would be happy to provide the names and license numbers of all of my employees. As per state law, we do have their licenses hanging up, and we every month we check when they are going to expire. And if they have not produced their new license, they immediately do not work. And that is standard policy and procedure in our business. And those are hanging in my front lobby, and anyone can come in and see it. All of my massage therapists also carry their second, we call it the little license, with them, so that if they go to events, they can produce their license at that point too. As a legitimate business, it is very frustrating to have people call, and we get these periodically. We have people call and ask for, I want somebody that does a special favor, or other language. Sometimes they're very blatant about what they want. And that is not our business, and we immediately say that is illegal, do not call again. And we own 4 others. And so I have dealt with the city ordinances with Des Moines and West Des Moines and Johnston. And so I'm familiar with all 3 of those. And all 3 are different. And I would just, it helps me to know that the city is going to have the authority to go in and shut down the places that are illegitimate. And so I would encourage you to think about, what is the goal? The goal is not to impose burden on the legitimate licensed massage therapists or the legitimate businesses, but it is to give the authority to the city to shut down the places that are not appropriate. Thank you.
John, can we have leave with just this person just for a couple questions? Sure. It is helpful because you're sort of unique in that you work in different cities. Can you give us some of your feedback on providing your services in these different communities? Can you give us any feedback on how things are going? Because it's interesting, you've got both Johnston, West Des Moines, Can you give us some feedback on that?
Sure. Well, obviously with Des Moines, all of our businesses, we have our licenses displayed. And so Des Moines is probably the easiest right now. I have all of the licenses up. West Des Moines is a little bit more burdensome, I would say, because they require that each of my licensed massage therapists go and get fingerprinted. And my therapists have said I feel like a criminal for the profession that I chose. And it's because other people are criminals. And so I would encourage you maybe not to do that. Or if they do, you can provide their license and their driver's license. I have to have that for my I-9. And so you can ask them. So you have a picture with their license. And every year I go on, and it is very easy. It will take you 2 seconds to look somebody up online to see if their license is active. And if they have any complaints against their license, that's very easy to look up too. The most burdensome, I would say, is Johnston. And that is very frustrating every single year because it also, my therapists say, I feel kind of like a criminal with all the information that I have to provide. My license is not enough. And to know that I am licensed by the state of Iowa, that's not enough. So I would say that's my perspective.
That's very helpful. So it's interesting, in the metro area, you've got a range of levels of involvement from the municipality. So you might have communities that's like Ankeny have.
Ankeny does not, and I'm a little surprised, and I wish they did have something, because there is one that I know that is not okay. It is an illegitimate business, and it's a half a mile from my house.
So one of the things that George raised as a specter is that as we put ordinances in one place, that it sort of encourages a migration to places that are less regulated. Have you seen that in the metro area?
I can't speak to that. I don't know if I've seen that. I know that the one that is in Ankeny, that's a half a mile from my house, has been there for a couple of years. And I think with Ames passing this, something that is similar to Des Moines, I think that Ankeny will soon follow, because I know we have Ankeny and Johnston, West Des Moines. For sure, those are the ones that I deal with. And I would say that Ankeny would be soon to follow.
Okay, thank you.
This is probably a very hard question to answer. If you can't, that's understandable. I know that Des Moines just passed their ordinance end of last year, I think. Is that effective in helping to crack down on and help, or is that just something you have no idea? I mean, in your industry,
you know what? I don't know the answer to that. That might be something that maybe Dr. George could speak to.
And Chief might be able to answer that too. So thank you.
And I guess the one thing that I would like as a business to see is if there was one, and I don't know if this is a city level or a state level, but I wish that there was one step further where if somebody does call, then we go after that person. Like, I can turn this, here's this phone number, here's the recorded line, here's what they asked for. But I don't know where we are with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Could I see a show of hands? How many people please come up. Is there anybody else that wants to? I'm trying to get a gauge on time. All right. We'll take one more after that, and then we will close public input then. Unless there's anybody else, I'm going to give you one more chance. Okay, very good. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello. My name is Lahoma Simmons. I go by Homie. I live at 433 Nature Road, Boone, Iowa. As you can tell, I am wearing a lovely Mary Greeley Medical Center shirt because I'm also a licensed massage therapist for hospice here in Ames. I do own my own business in Boone. Boone, in the fall, passed a massage ordinance because we had a nice little delightful shop open on the Story Street. If you guys know about Boone, and Story Street is our main street. Great, tacky little place opened up, and it caused a lot of concerns. So Boone went ahead and passed a massage ordinance, and they followed the Johnston massage ordinance, which it's pretty tight. I had to do a background check and I get the, fingerprint stuff and just, yeah, it's really invasive. I do like the proposal for the Des Moines with a little bit of corrections, because we work really hard to be proud of our licensure and what we do as our profession, to not feel like a criminal. And Boone really made me feel like I was born and raised in Boone. And I kind of feel like I'm in trouble and I'm going to have to fill out this every year. But what it did do was shut down that business. And so that's what I have to say about the actual passing the massage ordinance, is it actually did its job. But now if we can just make it a little bit more, not you're a massage therapist and you're a criminal, that would be great. Boone also tacked on a little something too, like if I do farmers market downtown Boone, it gets me out of my therapy room and I can see real people in the sunshine. I have to apply for a permit. I have to ask permission to have a table down at farmers market. So I think that's a little tough. And I don't know how you guys would handle that, but that's kind of hurtful because I've been doing it for 8 years and now I have to ask permission and to work a little bit later after 8 o'clock. So thank you very much for letting me speak and have a great day.
Thank you. Give the air, please. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Andrea Meadows. I own Dream Massage down here on Clark Avenue. I opened in August of 2018. I've been a massage therapist for almost 12 years. I started in Arizona and moved here to Ames, Iowa. And I live at 2318 Clayton Drive, Ames. Any other information I forget? Okay. The main thing I do agree with everything that my fellow therapist and owner said. It is important. The main thing I wanted to express is it is to protect the public from going to the wrong type of so-called therapist. You want to protect the public that they know that who they go to, who they call, who they walk into, that it is a legitimate massage therapist and that they won't get injured and that they won't get traumatized. It is also to protect us as the therapists too. I have unfortunately had calls from people who thought I was going to do some sort of illegitimate performance. I've been in a room with a client who thought, well, do you do happy endings? And yes, that's how blunt they are. And it is a very unnerving situation to be in and very vulnerable. But I know I have the mental know-how to say absolutely not, you will remove yourself from this room. So we want to prevent that from happening to therapists that come when they're young into this business, to know that they are going to be protected from that, but also that our public is protected because they should know that, oh, if I look up this person, they are legitimate and they have a license and I won't get injured and I will be safe. It goes for both parties. And that's just the main thing I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay, we'll close public input and council discussion.
Chuck, could you give us your perspective on, there's been some discussion about examples of illicit massage therapy in Ames. Could you confirm, deny, what's your assessment of the level of need here?
Well, if you look either in Iowa courts or if you look on the licensing actions of the state board, you know that we've done those investigations in this community in recent years. And they are challenging. We have a complainant, we have a victim, we have somebody who's been inside the business to start with. It moves us along pretty quickly. Absent that, it takes a lot of resources. But Certainly, if people believe that Ames is going to turn a blind eye to this or is going to ignore this, then I think we're vulnerable. People would try to move here. We've seen enough in the past that there's no reason to think we somehow are different.
Okay. Thanks.
May I ask, Chief, do you feel like, are there businesses now in Ames you wish you could go into, but you haven't had complaint? Like, would an ordinance like Des Moines say, would it give you teeth that you don't currently have and that you?
I think the challenge for us is when we do get a complaint or, well, first of all, let me back up. There's been some discussion tonight about the importance of public education, public awareness, and expressions of public concern. And so if people see something that it looks like it's out of line, illicit, illegal, we'd like a call. We answer the phone 24 hours a day. And frankly, those calls have led to other investigations that have been productive. And so first of all, I think the public needs to help all of us protect the legitimate part of this profession and discourage the illicit, illegal, and trafficking dimensions of it. That's probably a number one takeaway for all of us tonight. We're ready to help. We have some existing tools, but I think there's no reason to think we're exempt from future events, and the idea of requiring a license or more, the idea of requiring a license and being able to go in and examine those is a great starting point. I might note that some of the license actions that have occurred at the state based on our investigations, they often occur after the criminal proceedings are completed. So it's very late in the process that any state action is taken. And that action often falls, or people may be exempted from that action if they really aren't citizens of the state. It doesn't have much for consequences. So one of the challenges in this whole business, as I'm sure you recognize, is that some of the burden we create falls on the legitimate practitioners and the folks who are illegitimate. The ones we really are after sometimes escape that burden. Mm-hmm. So I want to respect what our local folks have done here to bring this to you tonight and the professional support of it. I think that's a key aspect of your decision and our work.
Thank you.
Other questions for Chief or Brian or discussion amongst us?
In a moment, I'd be happy to make a motion that the consensus here tonight has clearly been supportive of this Des Moines model. And I'm happy to make a motion or second or support it. But just before we go that route, any final comments on the Des Moines model in particular that you would want us to consider?
Well, I know our legal folks have taken a quick look at it, and there's some things that we would like to clarify in that. So I think there's some legal work to be done to sort of tidy that up and introduce some clear accountability for an establishment that does not comply with the placarding or removes placarding, for instance. So Mark may have more to say about that, but I think there is some tidying up on that ordinance that we might like to see if we were to head that direction.
Yeah, if I could Brian did a good job of framing it in. I think the two questions we want to know tonight is, do you want local involvement in this? And then two is kind of what level? And then I think that Mark and Chief and Brian and other resources they want, they can probably work through it and just get this, and it's going to come back for, an agenda item in the future, for a council meeting, and then we can start working through that further. So instead of saying, let's just implement Des Moines, I think that's our desire tonight, I think. So.
Right. Yeah, I think, it's, the one thing I wanted to point out too that we heard was a suggested tweak to Des Moines' model that would, somehow shift the burden more onto the business owner rather than the sort of the secondary, the victims really ultimately there. And I wonder how we can pursue that. But I think just to staff know that that's our desire. I hope that then we can see something written in that would help try to do that, because I think, you know, we want to protect legitimate massage therapists, but then we also do need to protect the victims in the illegitimate industry too. So
I think from council standpoint, we appreciate the fact that you actually are inviting some regulation and ordinances. Most people are fighting against that. And the point is that I think the point is to try and find a good compromise that would allow protect. I like this. Like one of the last comments that were made is to protect the general public as well as to protect the therapist. I think that's really well said in terms of what we're trying to accomplish and find that that medium. And I'm also intrigued by those that are licensed by the state to perform duties. They should be proud of their license. They should hang it up in the front lobby, and that would certainly quickly identify it. But I think that we don't want to from the day start parsing this ordinance.
Right.
We want to get some direction to staff. Let them come back. Brian, were you gonna say something? No.
I was gonna ask Brian.
That's my face. Okay. Oh, you're so prescient that you knew that Gloria's actually quite. Okay.
I'll give you a chance to say something, Brian. In regard to this registration of a business, which we've seen in some of these ordinances, is there any way that can work with the process that we already have in place for home occupation permits? Or would that be another layer if we were to introduce something like that?
I haven't taken a look at the requirements for home occupation permits in anytime recently. So I think I'd need to study that a little bit further.
That's fine. The reason I ask that is because if we are thinking at all of going with that business registration addition, I would like it if we knew whether we were imposing yet another level of business registration on those who already have gone through the arduous permit process for a home occupation. So if there were any way that those things could work together so that the same application could serve, I think that would allow us to not say you're exempt, but to at least make the process friendlier to those people who already have a rigorous process to follow.
Okay, so absent any other questions or discussion, is there someone ready for a motion in terms of, do you want local involvement, first of all?
Happy to make a motion.
Okay.
You want this in a couple of pieces, or can I just
you can do it together.
All right, so I would move to have staff bring us possibilities for an ordinance, or simply further decision points along the lines of Des Moines' ordinance, adding some provisions to somehow hold the owners and managers responsible, and some additional measure to assist in investigation once you get into a business and find it warranted. Maybe that's business information forms, maybe it's something else.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
Is that specific enough for staff to work with?
Well, I think really you're looking for a staff,
Yeah.
looking for a staff report.
Yep.
And then once that report comes back, then you can go ahead and mark and start drafting the ordinance. I think is what you're looking for. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, where I get a little sideways is with the business information forms. I was back at work for a second. Is those, while they seem real easy to do, if you work in multiple communities, your employees turnover, it's hard to keep those up, and mistakes are going to happen in the future. It's just something that's not going to get maintained. So I'm curious as to what options there might be on a spectrum of those two, because requiring someone to file something annually or not filing something annually, it's going to create kind of a bifurcation of information that's going to get outdated.
Well,
and you can just,
I think the idea of the Des Moines ordinance is basically the least restrictive and doesn't include
Yes.
that. So I think that's kind of
it just came up, so I just wanted to express an opinion about.
Yep. I'd say that I share your opinion when it comes to actually making a decision about this later. And the Des Moines ordinance requires it to be produced only after being demanded by city staff, when they've already determined there's a reason to do it, and then someone has to sit down and write it up.
Yep.
But whatever, I'm interested in what staff thinks about this.
Yep.
Allie, I'm going to put you on the spot. We had an ISU student representing the students. Do you have any input for council?
Not particularly. I think all of the input that we've received tonight has been really good, and I'm really looking forward to see what changes you guys make to the Des Moines one and see how it can fit our community the best. So I think everybody's done a really good job tonight. So
on behalf of the student body, you would see them being very much supportive.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I assumed that, but just didn't want to work you
Sure.
out. All right. Any further discussion?
Hi, John, just a way of thanks to the people that showed up tonight. We don't get a room full of people like this every city council meeting. You may think we do, but normally we don't. So a lot of you took some time on a beautiful spring night to be here, and 15 people stood up and shared their thoughts. And so we appreciate the community involvement. This is ideal. So thanks for coming out tonight.
Okay. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? All right, carried unanimously. Okay. So just for information, the next step that will happen is that there'll be an item on the agenda. We don't necessarily set a date because the point is it takes some time. There's a lot of things in the staff's hopper, but it'll come back as a staff report. Council will discuss that. We'll invite public input like we had tonight on that particular topic, and then on the basis council decides they want to move forward, then they'll give direction to staff to start drafting an ordinance. So and then when we have an ordinance come in place, it usually takes we have to have 3 readings. So it's going to take several months to go through this process. It won't not be instantaneous, but the point is, the wheels are certainly in motion now at this point to start moving that forward, but we let staff decide and city manager decide the schedule, but we know it's an important thing for our community. So
just to clarify for people who want to follow this, would we be in contact with George and Michelle to let them know when the next step is, and then they can use their communication to let people know? Do you think that's reasonable, Brian?
Yeah,
we'd be in touch with them. I'm just trying to give people a sense, if they want to follow this, how they would go about knowing when we take this up again.
If George and Michelle are willing to be the points of contact, we're happy to communicate the next steps to them, and they can disseminate them.
So if people have an interest, you saw George and Michelle tonight, make sure they have your contact information, and so that way you can follow along with the progress of this.
George who?
Oh.
All right. We have a few more items of business. You're welcome to stay around, but thank you very much for coming to the meeting. So, all right, council, we move on to.
Oh, they're not.
You don't want to stay for the rest of this?
This one.
No?
This is going to be great.
It's a stale line.
Yeah, that one doesn't need any.
Yeah, I'm not. Just gonna
That was a new one, though.
Cold shoulder that one. Yeah, I know, right? That is a new one.
She sent me an email saying she couldn't make it tonight. Okay, council comments. Gloria?
Are we doing?
We're not doing
disposition?
Yeah, that's next. After
Oh,
council comments.
after
Oh, and you know what?
I'm sorry.
It's flipped. Let's do disposition and communications. Thank you. We'll flip them on the agenda.
So we're doing.
We're going to do this first.
Okay,
All
so
right.
I would like to move that we get a staff report or a memo, whatever, on Brian Teresi's letter regarding the cornbread sign.
Second.
Excuse me, audience. Would you please? We're trying to finish up our meeting here, so thank you. All right, go ahead, Gloria. Say it again, please.
So I'd like to move that we get a memo from staff regarding the letter from Brian Teresi regarding the cornbread sign.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Carried. Next item, number 2, letter from a concerned citizen regarding parking on Welch Avenue.
Entertaining
No
reading.
action.
Entertaining reading, but we can't even respond.
Nope.
There's no address.
Okay, no action. And item 3 on mayors and council bike ride. That's just for information.
Yeah, we need your comments if you for some reason do not believe this is the kind of event you're thinking about.
That's good.
Try to get input from the bike groups and everything.
Now that we have an ordinance in place that enables us.
Legally to write on, pardon me? So I'll
Oh,
assume,
Kittico Mass is partnering too, it looked like. and-
Yes,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
That's good.
So unless you give her any feedback, she's going to proceed as outlined. Okay, great. She'll appreciate that.
All right, council comments. Gloria.
Tomorrow night, safety walk, Campus Town, be at the intermodal facility at 8. Set out and then enjoy the rain. Sounds like we might get a little rain. I think that's it.
Okay.
Nothing tonight for me. Thank you.
So we recently had our first motorcycle fatality in a while, and just as a reminder, people who are getting their motorcycles out, be safe. Hate to see loss of life. That's it. Thanks.
Chris?
Nothing tonight.
Rowan?
We've got the Eco Fair on Saturday. That's from 9 to 1 here at City Hall in the auditorium area. So folks should come out and check out what the city has to offer and what businesses have to offer.
Okay.
That's all I've got.
Allie?
Just echoing Gloria, hope to see some of you guys at the safety walk tomorrow. So yeah, looking forward to it. Hopefully we don't get rained out too bad. But yeah, that's it for me.
Just my part-time job is full-time right now down at the State House, and there continues to be a lot of action going on of interest. I'm trying to keep you apprised of what is going on. I will say this, that there is, regarding the property tax bill, there has been an outpouring of, I'm essentially trying to mobilize and rally as many, mayors. I don't think there's a city that, well, I think there's one city that is in favor of some parts of the property tax bill, but not all the property tax bill. But it's, we're only about 2.5 weeks away from end of session. May 3rd is when it shuts down. Speaker Uppmeyer indicated that she was trying to get done by the end of next week. But as those who have tracked legislation, you get whiplash, and every time you turn around, there's an amendment going, back and forth. There is an amendment that was introduced on the rental cap that makes it retroactive to, basically abolishes rental caps effective January 1 of this year. So I haven't seen it yet on the debate calendar, but it's going to happen pretty quickly.
Of this year, 2019?
That's correct.
Thank you.
And so anyway, until it's actually signed into law, there's not much. Mark and I talked about it. He just advises to wait until we see what happens. But I do think that we're going to have to be poised to maybe consider some other things if that comes about. So anyway, I'm not prepared this time to really talk about it, but I think we'll probably be. And I don't think anyone has the interest or appetite to have this be drug out. It's going to be basically very quick in terms of dealing with it, but it's that's just the state of affairs. And I think the lobbyist, the anti-lobbying bill, I think that's dead. There's not, I haven't seen any traction on that at all, but it's a property tax one that really has us very concerned. And we are working, and I'm calling people I never thought I'd talk to before, but we're just trying really hard to, we talked about home rule tonight, and it's just, honestly, I was at a mayor's meeting on last Friday. The Iowa League of Cities is trying to get, and actually there's a lot of traction to get a network of mayors set up. And I think it's long overdue that we could actually could mobilize mayors across the entire state in very quick order through contacts and just from relationships for legislative issues, for mentoring, for education, just for, getting people, just getting bouncing ideas off as well too. So that will be helpful. But there's a universal, grave concern about the status of this property tax bill. So, but all I was going to say was that there's a new term being circulated, not only in Iowa, but actually it's around the nation. This is happening around the nation as well too. It's no longer, please observe home rule. It's basically, we're seeing an increase in state interference in local affairs. And I think that's really a good way of putting it. State interference of us endeavoring to represent our constituents and be held accountable. And our staff does an outstanding job putting together budgets. We have open meetings, and we deliberate out in the open, and typically it's unanimous in terms of supporting the budgets, and we try and keep the levy rate as low as possible, while still providing services people expect. And if our constituents don't like that, then every 2 years they can remove half of us from council, and every 4 years the other half, and the mayor. So anyway, it's we're working hard. I'm trying to keep you all updated where we're at, but and if I needed, and David has mentioned, you know, hey, if you need help, I think right now it's more or less I'm speaking on behalf of the council. It's mayors that are really getting, you know, organized, and we've had some conversations with the governor as well too, and trying to get an audience with her as well too, and trying to express our concerns. So anyway, it's just I hate to say it, but it's just all wait and see. But it's I just got an email here a few minutes ago, and not opened up yet, but the state bill is now just hit the airwaves, and we've been waiting for that for several weeks, and so.
Senate, is that a bill?
The Senate just got released. So, and so anyway, stay tuned. But it's something that may affect, you know, other things in our decision-making process as we go forward. Anyway. All right, entertain motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right. We are adjourned.